SkillStruct presents.
Hey everyone, welcome to the SkillStruct Presents Tech series, where today we have Jennifer Opal, who has done many things in the technology space at such a young time in this industry. And I'm fortunate to have her finally on the platform. It's been a journey just to get here, but I just wanted to say, Jennifer, welcome to the SkillStruct Presents Tech series.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And we're definitely going to unpack a lot of things. You've been on an incredible journey, so I'm really excited for you to be here. The theme today is DevOps, so we're going to deep dive into DevOps, kind of educate the people a bit about DevOps, because it's one of those things that are, really bubbling right now, but at the same time, there's a lot, I guess, people can learn, just people who are beginning or starting out who may not know what DevOps is. So it'll be good to unpack that a little bit. And also, like I said, you've done a lot in this space, so we'll definitely unpack that too. I think first of all, I guess, why don't you talk to us about your journey getting into the technology industry? Because I guess you didn't go through the conventional, you studied computer science through university, and then you went on to a grad program. You kind of went a different route, and it would be great to educate or tell the listeners what that route was.
Of course. So I got my first introduction to coding in 2017, October 2017. I always say the month because it was my birthday month. I'm a Libra, so I always mention that.
I'm a Libra too, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, are you? Oh my gosh, I love that. So when I got my first introduction to coding, I was in my second year of my degree and I was doing business and French language. Honestly, when I went to do the degree, I went about it the wrong way. Normally, when you enter education, it's like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. This is the career path I want to go for, and this is why I'm doing this degree. Whereas at that time, I went the other way around, where I went and did this degree thinking that I would find something for me to do because I genuinely didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. So when I got to do the course, it was only once a week with Code First Girls, and it just kind of, as weird as it might sound and as cliche as it might sound, it really just kind of unlocked something within me. I always knew I was a creative person, and it kind of made me see that this was the career that I wanted to do. I wanted to learn more about what coding was, what you can do with it, and what I wanted to do with it. So fast forward a year, Code First Girls did a program with a major telecommunications company here in the UK. And it gave myself and about just under 30 women and non-binaries and taught us how to code basically. It was a 4-month program. I was in my final year of my degree, and the program would give us the opportunity to also interview for a job with that company, but I didn't know whether I was going to get it or not. So I was balancing my weekdays doing this program and my weeknights going to uni 4 nights a week, which was incredibly stressful and very tiring, but it paid off in the end. And I was offered a job after passing assessments and completing projects, etc. on the program. I dropped out of uni and I moved from London to Belfast in Northern Ireland. Didn't know anyone out there. Never thought I'd be living out there, very random. And that's where I got into tech. And things changed from that point because I realized that I was the only Black person in the building of about 600, an estimated about 600 people in head office. And I was the only Black person. And from sharing my experience of being the only one in a building full of people and how lonely it was, I didn't realize just how impactful that was. And then that just changed the trajectory of my career from that point, realizing that sharing my experiences and being vulnerable about that would have an impact on so many people. So yeah, it's been quite a random journey, honestly, and not very conventional. I went from wanting to be a children's psychodynamic therapist and graduated with a certificate in counseling, to then suddenly working in DevOps and coding and still trying to figure out what it is I'm actually doing every day, because you're literally learning every single day. Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's
But yeah,
amazing.
that's my
Yeah.
journey.
Oh, that's a lot to unpack, should I
Yeah.
say? Very good, though. It's actually really interesting. Like I said, like you've done a lot in this space, and one thing I'm, interested in, first of all, before we deep dive into that, is a bit of program credentials. So sometimes I ask people during this tech series what your programming credentials were, i.e., what was your first programming language, your hello world. Is the classic that we always use when we're coding for the first time. What was your hello world? What was your first experience actually programming?
Yeah, it was definitely with the Code First Girls program and being introduced to JavaScript and printing the hello world on there. And I was just like, what is that all it takes? I don't know what it was. It was just like, that was the first time for me. And it was new for me because I didn't know what coding was, right? And growing up, I don't really come from a family that has engineers and doctors and things like that. So the idea of me wanting to do something like that, or even knowing what that was, I didn't have access to that information, and it wasn't something that was taught or introduced to me in school either. So yeah, it was JavaScript. JavaScript was my first hello world. Yeah.
Wow, awesome. Okay. I think a lot of people's entry point, I guess the flexibility of JavaScript is definitely a good choice, and it's easily accessible, should I say. So it's something that anyone really, in theory, if they really wanted to get into programming, it's a great space to actually get started using JavaScript, I would say as well.
I definitely agree. I think like if you are like, when you are learning to code, and for me as a neurodivergent person, and also as someone that's quite visual in terms of my being introduced to code in a visual way was the best way for me to be introduced to it. And I would highly recommend that when someone's trying to understand how it works and how it all comes together. Building a website is always the best place to start, in my opinion. It's not for everybody, but I think that's the best introduction, and it definitely worked for me. So I'm able to see what each line of code is doing. I'm able to see how it works and how it all comes together, and it helps in terms of learning. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Awesome. And now you're at the point where you're responsible for deploying, doing the CI, CD potentially. We'll explain these terms, by the way, as we talk in DevOps. And I wonder now if you can talk about that transition into DevOps and how you've actually become a DevOps engineer.
Of course. So when I was at the previous company that I was working for, started off as a software engineer working in test automation. It got to a point where it was quite repetitive. There wasn't really anything challenging, and I wanted something that would challenge me. And then after about a year, I was then I asked to be moved into the DevOps team. And the DevOps big data team. And I started off as a DevOps big data engineer. And it was a difficult role. Like, DevOps is hard. And I have to say that and stress that it's definitely a difficult thing to do. And I was still quite new. So there was a lot of tools I had to learn and understand. And from doing that, I did that for about a year. And then the beginning of 2021, I realized that I was at a point where I wanted to change and go into something different. And there's a variety of reasons for that, which I definitely delved into a lot on LinkedIn and sharing up my social media platforms. And then I moved into working at Dropbox. So I got an interview with the HelloSign team at Dropbox and was offered a job, and it would be fully remote. And I've been working here. I'm still quite new, still learning daily. And it's a completely different stack to what I was using in my previous company. So there's a lot that I have to familiarize myself with, and a lot that I actually haven't used yet. But yeah, so I've been here for now coming up to, I started in March. So that's been April, May, June, 3 months now. So I'm very new here. Yeah,
awesome.
that's where I am.
Awesome. No, that's great. And why don't you talk to the people about what actually is DevOps in your opinion?
Yeah, the thing is like, I feel like a lot of people ask this question. A lot of people always ask as well, what is a DevOps engineer? Or they want to become a DevOps engineer, but they don't necessarily understand what it means. So for me, the way that I translate it is DevOps is a culture. DevOps is a software development process, right? And you're using that to, in terms of working towards to ensuring that the product that you are creating and the delivery of that product is basically the best that it can be. And I simplify the words as much as I possibly can, because I understand that sometimes there are people that don't have a technical background. I might get overwhelmed with the big words and all that type of stuff. But basically the main role for DevOps is to increase the quality of the products that you're creating within the company that you're working for. You are working on increasing and improving the collaboration between development and operations so that the workflow within the organization is basically better. So the way that you're delivering the product, the way that you're pushing it out, the way that you're working on things and moving it through the pipelines is just great and perfect and works well. I hope that's the best simplified way that I can describe it so everyone can understand. But also, you know, it's also done differently in different teams and different organizations, and they use different tools. So you might find that in some cases, one team or one company will do DevOps in a different way to how someone else would do it, using different tools, for example. So yeah, I really hope that makes sense. Sometimes, like with my dyslexia, in my head, I feel like I said it right. And then when it comes out, what am I talking about? But I hope it made sense.
No,
honestly.
I mean, that made sense to me, just to put it out there. And I think what I understood from that is basically you're saying that it improves the ultimate goal of deploying a system to a customer. And obviously you're describing the two processes. Like I prefaced CI/CD before, so you've got continuous integration and then you've also got continuous deployment, right? So you're always building and deploying. That's the ultimate essence of what DevOps is, right? So you're building something and then you're deploying it and you're trying to make that transition smooth. Because I remember the days where when you're not using DevOps, everything's all manual. You're literally dragging files to the web server. You're literally clicking on, you know, that IIS push and deploy. And there's a lot of manual things that were happening before, but obviously with using tooling from DevOps, that makes that process a lot easier. And that also makes the customer happy because they get their new and improved updates a lot quicker too. And that's essentially the role that you play.
You explained it better than me. Should have asked me. I feel like you should have just done it.
I only basically got what you got and just basically, you know, dunked it. You set me up, I just dunked it basically. So yeah, no, that's what's up. And in terms of what you do in DevOps, then do you have a preference of where you like to be? Do you like the CI part of it, so just working on building, or do you like the deployment? What's the fun side of it for you?
For me, I would say that I'm not sure. And I'll be honest about that, because I still feel like I'm exploring and still trying to know where I'm most comfortable. And as I said, like there's a lot of tools that I still haven't familiarized myself with yet and fully understood yet. So some of the tools that we use in our team is, for example, Spinnaker. And we did not use that in my previous team. I'd never heard of it before. Tools like Packer, never used that before. So there's things that I have to kind of familiarize myself with and understand more. And I think that as I grow in confidence and grow in understanding how these tools come together and how they work to deliver software and how it fits into the workflow of the team and the product delivery, etc. I wouldn't say that I know exactly which side I enjoy more, but I will say that when I do have that challenge to kind of build something or improve something or automate something, I enjoy being able to plan ideas and unpack and think of ways to make things better. I like being able to find solutions, you know?
Yeah.
So even when it's like, we want to automate this, for example, because we believe it will produce this, then breaking down the idea and thinking about how to go about that, I enjoy the planning stage. And then once you get to the end where it's like, you've deployed it, it feels good, right?
Yeah.
But also the planning and the building of it, I enjoy that also. But I don't know, there's one that I enjoy more than the other at the moment.
Maybe it's a bit of both. Maybe the answer is both.
Yeah.
Maybe it's none. Yeah, no, that's what's up as well. I mean, you can just say, yeah, both essentially, which is cool as well.
Yeah.
And in terms of when you are deploying and going into DevOps, is there an appreciation you have for any stage of the software development lifecycle in particular? As you get more and more involved in DevOps, is there a newfound appreciation with software development or deployment? Is there like, what's been enlightening becoming a DevOps engineer?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think now. What's been enlightening for me? Sorry.
No, that's okay. No,
I'm really trying to think it through. I think the overall process of it all, that there's not one part of the life cycle that's more important than the other. And I think that sometimes you might think that the end goal of it is just getting it deployed, right? Just pushing it through, getting it done and moving it forward. But I've come to respect the fact that every part of the life cycle has that importance, and there's not one that's weaker than the other. So even taking the time to plan things, taking the time to collaborate with your team and discuss things discuss projects and discuss ideas on improving how things come together within the team, how things are delivered, how you're going to be testing and deploying and monitoring the performance of everything that you're deploying. That every single part of that has an importance, and I've seen just how valuable it is. If you miss one, you're gonna have a problem, right? Like you can't not see value in that. So even if you have something that you have to put out, right? Missing the planning stage of that will have an effect. If you are working on something, missing the deployment side of things or missing the deadline of when it's supposed to actually be like deployed, in order to ensure that the customer's having a good experience with the product, it will have an effect. So I have a lot of respect for each and every part of the life cycle, because I understand I've come to learn the value of each side. So it's important not to neglect any one of them. They all play a huge part, and a huge equal part in my eyes. They all play a huge equal part for me. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, to be honest with you, I agree. Like, I think each component has its importance, and maybe perhaps some of the DevOps stuff previously wasn't seen as important. Maybe people who are, I don't know, just focused on code were just like code, and not forgetting that customers need this. And especially in these days, right, there's always constant updates. We need that continuous deployment, and that involves the CI part of it, that continuous like integration, so we can actually get that product out there to customers. So I think you're right. Every sort of cog in the machine, as it were, has its position, and it's equally important. One cog misses, then it all crumbles. It doesn't function anymore. So it's definitely important. And leading on to that, why would you say, for people who are maybe not convinced about DevOps or maybe aren't sure about DevOps, why is DevOps important?
I would say, like, for those that aren't convinced, I think just, first of all, like, just really look into it. I feel like when you look on even social media, sometimes I understand there's always sometimes debates about it and people kind of going back and forth on tech Twitter, you know, like the fingers are just going a bit mad. But I do think that there's so much value in it. I think that it really helps in terms of the collaboration. ensuring that information is being shared equally. You're not missing any steps. And I think that it also helps in ensuring that there's, like, for me, from a personal standpoint, I find that it helps me in terms of accountability, right? If I am leading a project, if I'm leading a fix, whatever it might be, I have the team to kind of hold me accountable with that. And also having the operation sides of things as well, aware of that, having that accountability with them. But the communication is so, so important. The collaboration is so, so important. And having that culture within the team, I think it brings a lot of value, not just to the team, but also to the organization, but also to the product and the company. And it helps. It really does make a big difference. And I'm noticing that more and more companies are trying to move towards the DevOps culture and implementing that in their team. And I think it's a really good way. I think it's really valuable. I think it's valuable. I think look at it, research into it, read a bit more about it, maybe speak to other teams and how they're doing it. But I do think that it's a very, very valuable culture. I find it very, very interesting for me. Yeah, that makes sense. Hope so.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it is definitely very important, and you've definitely eloquently explained that well. And moving the topic slightly on to actually an important topic to you and everyone, actually, to be honest with you, neurodiversity. And obviously this is quite a personal one to you, and you being such an advocate in this space. I wonder if you can educate, the masses listening about neurodiversity in general, but also how you've applied it really successfully in the tech world.
Sure. So I ended up falling into neurodiversity, like, advocacy quite randomly, I guess accidentally, quote unquote. So neurodiversity refers to the variation of how the human brain is in different people, right? And for example, for myself, I have dyslexia, dyspraxia, and ADHD. I was diagnosed as an adult. So it's about 3 years ago. Yeah, I was diagnosed about 3 years ago. So dyslexia has an impact on my reading. So I struggle to read. My reading speed is incredibly slow. I use reading software to help support that. ADHD, it presents differently in other people, but for me, I take medication to support that because it has a huge effect on my mental health, my mental state. It can definitely have other side effects for people, insomnia, affecting their learning development sometimes. So for me, I take medication to help me with focus, right? I think that for some people, when they think ADHD, they think, oh my gosh, you're just hyper-focused all the time. But there's a lot of other side effects with that. And like I said, it presents differently in different people, right? So for me, I don't necessarily hyper-focus, not without the medication, right? So when something is overwhelming me, I could experience anxiety, but physically feel it. And feel very overwhelmed in that way. And I could end up maybe finding something else to stimulate my brain to avoid me doing something that I find very, that can trigger that anxiety. So for me, having a space where I could talk about that, the best way for me to do that was just to blog and tweet and just vent, right? And I didn't think that there were people that were either in tech or interested in getting in tech that also had the same I guess, quote unquote, disabilities that I have. So as I was like sharing that, I realized that talking about it and sharing it is actually making a difference to people, to be able to see someone that has what I have and seeing that it's possible for them to be able to have a career in tech or any other industry with being different and thinking differently. So when I got into tech and the struggle of having to learn so much, because with tech, like nothing stays the same. Even when you start your career, people kind of think once you started to learn how to code and then you get the job, then it's done. Nope. Someone lied to you. You've been scammed. You've been scammed. It never stops. You never stop learning, right? It keeps happening. So then you find that as a dyslexic, it's like you have huge amounts of text, you have loads of books to read, you have all this information to absorb. So I had to find ways of reading, right? Reading, absorbing that information, and still being able to do the best I can and deliver and be a part of the team, whether it be here at Dropbox and where I was before. But talking about it and advocating for it and letting people see that it doesn't matter whether my brain is different. I was born this way, but it doesn't mean that I can't flourish in the tech space and I can't do the job and that I can't be a part of a team and help to deliver great solutions within any organization. I think that being different is something to be celebrated and something to include and to include within your teams, within your organizations, and to allow that safe space to be there for us to be able to be ourselves. Yeah,
no, definitely. You've definitely used it to empower yourself in the tech space. Obviously, you've done a lot, like I alluded to at the beginning, won quite a few awards in the tech space, relatively short time in the tech space, which is amazing. I want you to basically talk about and reflect on those for people listening as well, just because I think it's important equally to celebrate, successes and acknowledge them as well. So I'm just wondering, do you celebrate that, and how do you celebrate those sort of victories when you get awarded for being a Rising Star or Women Tech 100, just to name a few? I literally just named a few there. There's more. So yes, please talk about some of the highlights and how you celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a humble moment, when that happens. I think for me, I look at it as the fact that the value of your voice and being vulnerable and being honest just about who you are and the intersectionalities of your identity, how much of a difference that can make to people. And with every nomination and every award that I've won, it tells me that my voice made a difference to someone or made a difference to a lot of people. I didn't imagine that my career would result in this. I didn't. And I'm still learning, right? I'm still learning every day. I'm still fully trying to understand what it is I'm doing. And sometimes I'll come into work, I'm like, I don't know what this is. What? Who? What? YAML? What's that? Sometimes it happens. And I'm still learning every day. But the fact that I'm open to just share that sometimes it's hard. Not even just sometimes. DevOps is hard. Being in tech is hard, but being able to inspire people along that journey and being vulnerable about that, honest about that, I didn't think it would make an impact the way that it is. And sometimes, like even now, I'm still trying to process everything, right? I think when I received my nomination for the Black Tech Achievement Awards in 2020, oh my gosh, was that last year? It doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, it was last year, wow.
What? This lockdown has done something to me. But yeah, like when I received that nomination, I was really surprised and I was really shocked and I was also humbled. But when I won, I was lost for words and I was incredibly emotional. I think even after the event was done and people were coming over to congratulate me, and I broke down in tears. My makeup was gone by the time I finished crying, and just having people comfort me and support me and celebrate me was such a beautiful moment for me. And I'm glad that I've been able to inspire others that look like me, that are also neurodivergent, that never thought about a career in tech. And even if it's not a career in tech, but just being a Black cishet neurodivergent woman, that in itself inspiring people in other industries too. And I'm grateful for that. I don't allow it to get to my head though. I know that for some people it'd be like, oh, you've won some awards, so you just think you're all that. I don't let it get to my head. I don't, because I still know that there's things that I don't know, right? There's things that I don't know, and there's goals that I want to achieve technically. And I've still got a lot of growth. I'm still very young in the tech space in terms of my career, right? I've still got a long way to go, but I'm grateful. And I'm just going to continue to just be myself, continue to share who I am and how I got here. And hopefully it will just continue to just make a difference in other people's lives. And if awards come along the way, great. If they don't, great. I just want to use my voice to help make a difference to someone else.
Yeah, no, that's what's up. And I guess keeping it humble like that is a key to more success in a way, because you're not focusing too much. Obviously, you appreciate and you celebrate, but you also want to elevate yourself. Wow, that rhymed. I didn't do that on purpose, but yes, you just basically want to always constantly grow and stuff like that, which is awesome, actually. And taking it a little bit back when you first started programming, is there anything you would tell yourself, back then, just starting out, just for those people, I guess, who are getting started in programming, just how to get started maybe, and some advice getting into programming?
Yeah, I would say, I think for me, going back, I'm glad I took the plunge. I'm glad I took the plunge to do something that I didn't think was possible for me. I didn't know anyone that looked like me that was working in tech. As I said, I didn't grow up that way. I would say that we were we were poor, growing up. We were poor, we struggled, right? So I didn't see that. I didn't see engineers and coders in my family. I didn't I didn't get our first PC until I was we didn't get our first PC until I was I think 16, 17 years old. I got my first laptop at 19. So I didn't have that privilege, of being introduced to computers and stuff from a young age. I did get access at school, yeah, but at home, no. But I would say that no matter where you are at this moment, no matter your age, I am now 30, and I got introduced to coding at 27. I would say that just take the plunge and be patient with your journey. And another thing that I would say is a mistake that I made after I finished the coding program with Code First Styles. A mistake that I made is that I Googled too much. And I found that sometimes, I would start learning JavaScript, for example, and then I would see a blog or a video saying, oh, don't learn JavaScript because of this. 7 reasons why you shouldn't learn Python because of this. Okay. Do this. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm learning Python and they're telling me not to do it. Oh my gosh, I'm learning. And it's too much. There's no wrong programming language to learn. There's no wrong programming language to learn. If you have started on JavaScript, stick with it. Understand it. Understand the syntax, get to know it, do programming challenges, build something with it. Find a project that interests you and just build with it. Do something. It might not work straight away. It won't be built in a week. I know there's some people that'll be like, learn to code in 3 days. I'm still learning to code after 3 years. And someone else in tech that I connected with in my first year of actually being in tech said to me that he's been using JavaScript for 25 years and still is learning. You will never stop. So be patient with your journey. If you decide to pick a career path, don't pick a career path because of the salary that they're offering you. Pick it because you are genuinely interested in pursuing that career. Put the salary aside, because if you keep chasing for the salary and for the high salaries and what they're offering you, you're going to lose the reason why you even wanted to get in tech in the first place. So just take your time and be patient with it. Be sure to connect with the community. Don't be afraid of connecting with the community. It doesn't matter if you've been learning to code on your own for a week, for a day, for a month. It doesn't matter. You'll find most of the tech community on Twitter. There's hashtags that you can use, hashtag Black Tech Twitter, women in tech, Black in tech. I think even ADHD Twitter as well has some engineers as well that are working in some amazing organizations. So you may be able to connect with them on there, but don't code on your own. Reach out to people, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm giving so much advice, but I would say the question thing. When it comes to questions, I know that a lot of people, for example, will ask me, I want to be a DevOps engineer. And then they'll say, what's a DevOps engineer? If you don't know what it is, you don't want to be a DevOps engineer. Be sure to research and understand what the roles are that you're looking for, and why you're interested in that before you reach out to people and ask questions. Do the research first, be patient with your journey, stick with one programming language. You'll be able to transfer it into other skills as well and other job roles as well. And don't be afraid to apply. Don't be afraid to apply. When you feel that you're ready and you feel that you have a portfolio done or you have things that you want to share, apply for that apprenticeship, apply for that junior role. Just put yourself out there and don't be afraid. Interviews are also practice as well, and it does help you. I could genuinely go on forever with this because I love being able to kind of share and just be
I'm like, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. That's what I'm saying. No, because it's all fire. It's all things that people need to understand and listen to. So I appreciate you answering it in that way. And I guess a different kind of reward that I want to talk about is actually, we're going full circle, just mentoring and giving back. How has that experience been for you, actually, you know, mentoring young people in the coding space? How has that been for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I wouldn't say that I've officially mentored one person, but I would find that some people would say to me that they look at me as a mentor, which I find really interesting. I'm like, shouldn't we be meeting like once a month or something? But I find I'm really honored by that. I'm really honored that, you know, there are people that look at me as a mentor, because I still feel that, like I said, I still feel like I'm learning, and I still feel like sometimes I'm a deer in the headlights with a lot of things in tech and in DevOps, etc. But I'm so grateful for that. But I've really enjoyed being able to give advice to others and being able to just be honest about my experience in tech, so that people are prepared that you may not have the perfect experience, and not every organization is perfect. Not every organization is inclusive or diverse as they may be aiming to be. So it humbles me. I always look at it as just a blessing. I really, really do. And I think that a lot of people appreciate my honesty, in that if they ask me a question, I would genuinely sometimes just say, I don't know what that is. I don't know what the answer is to that question that you're asking me. And I think that I would rather be honest about it than to pretend to be someone that has been in this space for years and years and years and knows everything, when I really don't know much yet. But it's something that I just find, like, something that I find honorable. I really do. And I think that giving back is incredibly important, especially to those that aren't of the majority, right? Those that are neurodivergent, those that are people of color, Black people. You just have to be you, right? And it makes such a difference to many. It makes such a difference to many. And I'm also learning from others. I think that also many might say that many sometimes look at mentorship as me just giving and constantly giving and giving and giving, but it's both ways. It's not just a one-way thing. So many people will ask, for example, oh, can you be my mentor? But they have to also ask themselves, what can they also give back? Not in a way where it's like financial or anything, but you may know that when you're constantly giving, it can get exhausting because then that person's only coming to you for something, but you also want to gain something back. It's a friendship, it's a relationship, you're connecting with each other, you're learning from one another. You know, if I'm, you know, introducing you to Python or, you know, taking the time to educate you on, I don't know, what CI/CD pipelines are, you know, don't be afraid to say, hey, do you want me to tell you how to do a TikTok video? Why not? You know, like, I would love to learn. I love that. And I find that happens a lot. I've learned a lot from others as well as people learning from me. At least I hope that they've learned from me too. But yeah, it's a give and take relationship, and it's a blessing to be in that position.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. And actually, you touched on an important point, actually. And it's really important for people just to put themselves out there, because you just never know who's learning from you. Because there are probably people that, like you say, you know, you're actually mentoring just by being you and just putting yourself out there, giving talks about certain topics and stuff like that. So you probably are mentoring so many people without actually knowing it. So just putting yourself out there is so important, just because people gravitate towards, you know, good energy, good learning. And so important to mentor. And I think for me as well, similarly, you know, just putting yourself out there, you get loads of people that just say, oh, I learned so much from you. And you're like, oh, I didn't even realize you were actually listening to what I'm saying. So you feel a little bit like, oh, okay. But yeah, like you're saying, it's a give and take in a sense, because, you know, as well as, you know, me giving my time back, I'm also taking a lot of learning as well, because I'm only elevating myself. Just when people are asking me questions, I'm figuring it out, and I have to learn to, you know, understand it really myself so I can explain it to other people. So I'm finding myself actually going back to my basics and just really sharpening my tools there. So it's definitely a process where I benefit, but, you know, obviously they benefit as well, really. So like you say, it's a two-way street.
Exactly. And I think that as well, another myth is that people think that you have to be in a certain position to be able to mentor. Like you have to have accolades, or you've got to be in tech for a certain amount of years, or you've got to be a senior engineer, or you've got to do this and do that. No, like, you can be learning how to code, and you could be doing the 100 days of code challenge. That journey, you're mentoring someone, because then someone is like, they did this with Java. I'm learning Java. I didn't know that you could do that. I've now learned something, right?
Yeah.
You're constantly, from sharing your journey, you have no idea who's watching, and you have no idea who's taking from the knowledge and the experience that you're sharing openly on social media, whatever platform that you're using. So I always encourage, like I always say that, like, even if you've just been learning for a day, let people know, because it might not be that you are sharing. Like, you don't have to put it on social media if you don't want to. For some people, they prefer to be private. Share it with family, share it with friends, because that makes a difference. You have no idea how that makes a difference. You don't know who they're going to pass that information to. You don't know what they're going to do with that. You could say, you know, to your niece, like, for example, I've got two nieces, and they're still young now. They're a year old, and the other one, my second one, is now coming up to 2 months old. And I can't wait for the day when I'm able to say to them, I'm an engineer. I'm a software engineer, I'm a DevOps engineer, I code and things like that. And they'll and they have that in their mind. And then they're introduced that growing up. Who knows what they could do with that info? Who knows what that can inspire them to be? So, you know, you can inspire anybody. It doesn't have to be on social media. It doesn't have to be through a hashtag on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter. It can be anywhere. It could be within your home. It could be in your family WhatsApp group. Just share it with someone. and allow yourself to inspire and mentor. Even if you don't think that you are in more ways than one. You are.
No, definitely. I agree. You've put it so eloquently again. And in terms of the importance of mentoring, I agree. Definitely. There's, different levels of, mentoring. Like you say, you don't have to just be, a senior or you've been in the industry for 10 plus years. You can be in it for 10 days and still give back to that person who's on one day, right? So definitely mentoring can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So switching gears back into DevOps a bit more, I'm just wondering, because you were talking about often the challenges when it comes to, working in DevOps from, just actually deploying and just that whole CI/CD journey. Do you have any sort of journey stories? Because I know for me, my background's more software engineer. And to be honest, the biggest struggles I've ever had is when I've had to deploy code. So for me, I recognize that space. You can have a lot of struggles or journeys in actually just getting to the place of deploying. So do you have any interesting stories when it comes to, deploying and being in that DevOps space?
Honestly, it is boring. No, I
Really?
actually don't.
Okay.
I can't think of anything. It's kind of boring for me. I think that like the honest challenge that I have is I guess I would say thinking of solutions to things, which I know is pretty much the element of DevOps, right? Like you're thinking of solutions, you're thinking about how to make things better. And I think that sometimes because there's so many tools and things are always coming out almost every week, every day. And I'd say that's the challenge for me, is thinking about what I could mention, or thinking about solutions to things and ensuring that it makes sense.
Mhm.
I don't know how to explain it. I think it's a combination of confidence in the knowledge that I have and confidence in understanding the tools that I'm using, and being able to say, I've noticed this and I feel like I think I can make it better. And I'm suggesting this, for example. Sometimes I can be really nervous. And I think that maybe, a lot of people may call it imposter syndrome. I think that that's something that I struggle with. I struggle with having that confidence to be able to just say, I have this idea, what do you guys think? And just closing my eyes and being like, what does everyone think? So I would say that's the tough part for me, or being honest about it, yeah, I would say that's the part for me that I find difficult.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I mean, I guess it's important that, there's different challenges, right? So for me, I was just thinking about, trying to deploy to production and it just fails epically. And it's just, oh, I've missed out a line or a semicolon or something. And everyone's kind of looking and like, why is this taking so long? I'm like trying to put the semicolon in and deploy as quick as possible. And just really being there for like hours, it felt like, but it was minutes just thinking, oh, why is this not deployed? So for me, I've been in that world a little bit. I've kind of, touched my toe in there a little bit, and I've just realized there's definitely a lot to it. And, just like you say, one small thing goes wrong, then obviously the whole thing kind of falls down. So it's very important. Whereas, in my software engineering hat, it's like I've got stat trace and I've got all these sort of things that can really help me a lot more. Whereas when you're in the DevOps world, there's a little bit less of that. So it's a lot harder in that sense. So I don't have as many tools to play with. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, I think it's normal, I guess, when you are. I don't think there's anyone that hasn't tried to deploy something and realized that there's something missing from what you've deployed. And it will go through the process, on Jira, where it's like, I'm gonna do this change. I'm gonna just have a branch in staging. I'm gonna apply that change through Terraform, and then let me know if it's okay for me to move it through for it to be reviewed. So I don't know, everyone has a different process of doing things. So for us, it's like, it will start with if you're going to apply a change in production, you take it through the cycle of trying it in staging first before you do that, making sure that it works in staging, then getting it reviewed by security engineers, making sure that it wouldn't, cause any issues in that respect, then getting the final review, and if it's all good, then they'll let us know that they're happy for it to be deployed into production. But then when you go through that process, which isn't straight away, right? It takes a while. Everyone's busy. There's a lot of CRs. Everyone's trying to get their fixes through and get their CRs through also. And you push it through, it gets through deployment, and you're like, I missed something. There's something I was supposed to add in there, and it's not there, and it's now in pod deployment. So you kind of have to double back a little bit. I feel like that's the part, but I think that happens. You learn to be more diligent and more attentive to the changes that you're making and trying to check things over and making sure that everything is right, making sure that you've done everything that you needed to do. And every experience with that is a learning experience. And you may start doing it less, but I don't think you will ever not do that. I think it's just the journey of an engineer in tech. It just happens.
No, I couldn't agree more. And for people who are just starting out, it still happens, even though you've been like 3, 4, 5, 10 plus years in it. There's always going to be silly mistakes where you just realize, oh, whoops, it just happened, really. So it's just important to know that there's always that constant journey, as Jennifer was saying, when you're, elevating yourself, as I like to say. So just want to put out there, definitely. And finally, I just wanted to ask you this question in terms of inspirational people or books or technology. Do you have a few people that come to mind when it comes to people that maybe impacted your career? It doesn't necessarily have to be in tech. It can be a lot broader, that really impacted where you are today.
Yeah. Oh wow, it's quite a lot of people.
Can you give me like 3 or 4?
Oh, 3 or 4. I would say, I'll say organization. I'll definitely say Code First Girls. It really, I would say Code First Girls is my biggest inspiration. Whenever I am doing a podcast interview or writing a blog, I always mention them because that was the organization that literally changed the trajectory of my entire life. And it didn't just have an impact on me, but also had an impact on my family. Because if I hadn't have had that free course, right, to get that introduction to front-end web development, and then the following year getting getting onto the digital immersive program, which was the further program, getting onto that, I don't know where I would be at this point. And I'm grateful that they have such an amazing mission to bring women and non-binaries into tech and introducing them to coding. So I rave about them so much. And as a daughter of migrants that came from the Democratic Republic of Congo, I am just so grateful, because that was the opportunity, I feel like, because my parents came here saying, we want you guys to, my parents were like, I want my children to have access to better opportunities. Code First Girls was that opportunity for me. And I'm honestly forever grateful, forever, ever grateful, honestly. I would also say Dion Conde-Farrell. She is one of the co-founders of UK Black Tech. She's also my mentor. She's an amazing friend, and she's also senior developer at TFL. Amazing person, and another Black woman in tech who has been doing amazing things and inspiring so many people. And I look at her as inspiration too, because she's accomplished so much. And I hope that I'm able to do the same and have the wealth of knowledge that she has in the tech space. Definitely something that I take as inspiration for me. The next person I would say is Amina Amina Arias, and you can find her on Twitter on @YesSheWrites. And we did the program together with Code First Girls, the immersive program. And I was really inspired by her, and I still am inspired by her in terms of her passion for others. And she really pushes in terms of accessibility. And I saw her passion grow in the last year, and how she has pushed on YouTube and pushed on Twitter as well, and how she's built her platform in, making accessibility shouldn't be like an afterthought, right? It should just be something that just comes naturally to everybody in all that we're doing. And I just admire her push and her passion in making a difference in that space. And the last person that I would say is my mom. My mother is my biggest inspiration, and she came from Congo DR to the UK the year that I was born. I'm a 90s girl, 1990, okay? And she came here as a 19-year-old and sacrificed her dreams and aspirations and moved to a country that she didn't know for me and my brothers to be in this position. And she always pushed and always said, you know what, whatever it is you want to do, just make sure that you're doing something that you love, you're doing something that you enjoy. And despite the amount of different paths that I took, the multiple times I dropped out of university, and I spent, from the age of 14, we grew up in a single parent home for good reason. But I'm grateful for her and the sacrifices that she made for me and my brothers, and for me to be able to find myself and find my purpose and find my identity in this world. So I'm grateful for her. Yeah.
Awesome. That's a lovely top 4 list. We'll put that there on the screen for people to see as well. Yes, honorable shout out to Mumsy. It's definitely important to give back for sure. And also just appreciate other people that have impacted you. And that actually rounds up basically this whole session, this tech series, and this whole session in particular. And really want to give you the final words, or the floor, should I say. Is there anything that you just want to leave us with before we close?
Yeah, I would just say that don't allow your circumstances to stop you from following your passion and following your interests. So whether it is in tech, whether it's outside of tech, whether you want to code or you don't want to code, or you're a student or you've been working in a particular industry for years and years, it's okay to make a switch. It's okay to make a change. It's never too late. If you're alive, it's not too late. So no matter what you want to do, just put yourself out there and take the plunge. Don't think about other people's opinions, and just put yourself out there. If you're on a learning journey for learning something new and you want to make a career switch, for example, use LinkedIn, connect with people on Twitter, let people know, and have that community around you to support you as you learn something new. And the last thing that I would say is inspire people with your journey. Inspire people around you, inspire people on social media, inspire people in your families, your friend circles, but don't allow your story to just disappear. Make sure that you share your story with someone else and allow them to be inspired by that too. Okay.
Awesome. Is there anywhere actually people can just reach out if they want to? Is there anything you just want to plug on that sort of front, social media and all of that?
Of course. At the moment, the best place to send me a message is on my LinkedIn. So you can find me, just search for Jennifer Opal. You can send me a message. I do take time in terms of getting back to people, but I will get back to people. And you can also follow me on Twitter @_Jennifer Opal. And if you want to learn more about me and about the things that I do and more about my story, you're more than welcome to check out my website, which is jenniferopal.co.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer, for taking the time. that's it, people, for this edition, the DevOps edition with Jennifer Opal. She's put her socials out there. We'll also put that on the screen as well. So if you want to follow her and continue to see her success and her many awards to come, then feel free to do so. I just want to say appreciate you for listening. Jennifer, appreciate you again for taking the time to be on the SkillStruct Presents platform. And people, until the next time, peace out.
Thank you.
This is a SkillStruct presentation. If you like what you hear and see, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.